In the year 49 AD, a 53-year-old man sat alone in Rome and wrote a letter about time. He was not writing for scholars. He was not writing for posterity. He was writing because his brother-in-law was wasting his life, and he could not stand to watch it happen any longer. The man was Lucius Annaeus Seneca, and the letter was on the shortness of life. Here is the part that should stop you 9 years later. At the age of 62, Seneca received a message from the Emperor Nero. The message did not say you are under arrest. It did not say you are on trial. It said only, die tonight. Seneca had spent years writing about time, about how it is stolen, wasted, postponed, and misunderstood. And now he had none left. What he did in those final hours is the most important part of this story. We will get there. But first, understand what he wrote, and why nothing in modern life has made it irrelevant. To understand the letter, you have to understand the man. Seneca was not a philosopher who lived quietly in poverty and meditated on virtue in obscurity. He was the most powerful private citizen in the Roman Empire. He was the personal tutor of Nero, the man who would eventually order his death. He was an advisor to emperors, a playwright of serious literary ambition, a statesman of considerable political weight, and simultaneously one of the wealthiest individuals in Rome. He owned vineyards. He owned ships. He had more money than most Roman senators could accumulate in 3 lifetimes, and he wrote extensively about the dangers of wealth. His critics noticed the philosopher who wrote about simplicity while living in excess, the Stoic who taught that virtue was the only true good, while quietly accumulating one of the largest private fortunes in imperial history. Seneca's response to his critics was not defensive, it was philosophical. He argued that wealth was an indifferent, neither good nor bad in itself, and that what mattered was how you related to it, whether it controlled you or you controlled it. That distinction matters for understanding on the shortness of life. Seneca was not writing from a position of ignorance about what a full life looked like. He had access to everything the ancient world could offer, and his conclusion, after all of it, was this: most people die before they have ever really lived. On the shortness of life opens with a statement that reads, even 2,000 years later, like a diagnosis. Seneca writes that it is not that life is short. It is that we waste most of it. This is not consolation. It is an argument. Seneca is making a precise claim that the problem is not the quantity of time available to a human being, but the quality of attention brought to it. He writes that if you were to collect and preserve every hour that ordinarily slips away, if you were to actually possess and command your time rather than simply occupy it, you would have enough, more than enough. The hours we spend distracted, anxious, waiting, performing busyness, deferring the things that actually matter, those hours are not paused. They're spent, they are gone, and they count against the total just as fully as the hours we spend deliberately. Seneca then makes a distinction that no productivity system invented since has improved upon. He separates 3 categories of time: the past, the present, and the future. The past is the only time that truly belongs to you. It cannot be taken. It is permanent. Every day that has been lived fully is a day no one can remove. The future is not yours. It has not arrived. To live primarily in anticipation of a future that may never come is to hand your only actual possession, the present, to something that does not yet exist. The present is what most people ignore most consistently. It is the only point at which action is actually available, and it is the point at which most people are least present. Seneca identifies 3 specific categories of people who, he argues, are not really living, regardless of how busy, successful, or admired they appear. The first category he calls the preoccupied. These are people whose time is permanently claimed by obligations that are not genuinely theirs. They are always answering, always responding, always handling something for someone else. They are useful to everyone around them and owned by none of it, because they have never stopped to ask which obligations are actually worth their time and which was simply handed to them by circumstance and habit. Seneca's language here is precise and uncomfortable. He calls this a form of enslavement, not legal enslavement, philosophical enslavement. The person who is permanently preoccupied is not free, regardless of how much money or status they have accumulated. The second category is those consumed by luxury and distraction. Seneca is not speaking against pleasure. He is speaking against the use of pleasure as an escape from the one thing that requires genuine attention, your actual life and what you are doing with it. He describes people who spend enormous energy building environments of comfort that require even more energy to maintain. The person whose lifestyle has become so elaborate that sustaining it is itself the full-time occupation. They are not living, they are administering. The third category is the most important for ambitious people specifically, those who postpone. Seneca uses a word for this in Latin, defer, which means to defer, to put off, to defer to later. He argues that postponement is the most dangerous form of time waste, because it is the most comfortable. It is not laziness. It is not distraction. It is the sincere belief that you will begin living fully once something else is resolved first. Once the business stabilizes. Once the children are older. Once the debt is cleared. Once I have enough saved. Once I have earned the right to rest. Seneca's response to this is among the most precise sentences in the entire Western philosophical canon. While we are postponing, life speeds by, not crawls, not passes, speeds. Here is what this means if you are ambitious, if you are building something, if you are in the years where everything feels like preparation for the moment when you will finally do what you actually intend to do. Seneca is not telling you to stop working hard. He is not arguing for idleness or premature satisfaction. The Stoics were not passive. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire while writing philosophy. Epictetus built a school of thought from inside slavery. Seneca himself operated at the highest levels of Roman power while writing about its dangers. What Seneca is arguing is a different kind of urgency, not the urgency of doing more faster, but the urgency of doing the right things now, rather than permanently deferring the things that actually constitute your life. He identifies two questions that every ambitious person should ask on a regular basis. The first, whose life am I actually living? Are the goals you are working toward genuinely yours, or were they handed to you by someone else's expectations, your industry's definition of success, your family's assumptions about status, the social environment you happen to grow up inside? The second, where am I actually present? Not physically, philosophically. Are you fully inside the work you are doing, the people you are with, the decision you are making? Or are you permanently suspended somewhere between what happened and what might happen, which is to say, absent from the only moment that is actually real? Seneca's prescription is not complicated. It is uncomfortable. He argues that you should live each day as if it is complete in itself, not recklessly, not without planning, but with the full acknowledgement that the day you are inside is not a rehearsal for a more important day to come. It is the day. And how you spend it is how you are spending your life. When the message from Nero arrived, Seneca did not panic. He did not spend his final hours trying to escape or negotiate. He gathered his friends. He had been spending the evening with them, talking as he often did, about philosophy and about how to live. He simply continued. He wrote his final thoughts. He dictated to his secretary. He was calm. Not because he was indifferent to death, but because he had lived, by his own account, deliberately enough that the end of life did not arrive as a sudden interruption of something unfinished. His wife attempted to die alongside him. He asked her not to. He wanted her to live. The guards prevented it regardless. Seneca's veins were opened. He died slowly. He is reported to have remained composed throughout, speaking to those around him until he could no longer. There is no way to know whether that composure was philosophical achievement or biographical mythology. Ancient sources are not reliable in the way that modern journalism is reliable, but the argument he made in the letter stands independent of how he died. The letter does not ask you to be unafraid of death. It asks you to be honest about what you are doing with the life you have before it arrives. How much of your time is genuinely yours? How much of it are you spending on what you actually value, versus what you have simply agreed to value because the agreement was easier than the examination? Seneca wrote that the wise person lives as long as they ought, not as long as they can. The length of a life, he argued, is not measured in years. It is measured in how fully those years were inhabited. Subscribe. One video. Every day. Ancient wisdom. Modern power. This is the corporate canon.